G'day. I'd like to read for you a short story that I wrote called Before the Bottlebrush Bloomed. The winding winter canola fields, fluorescent yellow and fuzzy as pom-poms, were still like the enormous rising sun, and they were as blushingly new as the vivid turquoise of the valley's low horizon. These were very evidently the good days, and, like all good days, it was likewise evident that they could not last forever. For the dream shifted, as dreams do, and the road that she had been driving on was now gone entirely, and she was on foot. The early morning was now just after 3 p.m. The fresh June weather was now November, and where the canola had boisterously reached for the baby blue sky, the ground was now red with flowers, masses of tangled, fallen red flowers. These were bottlebrush flowers, and they lay thick upon ground bare of grass. For, as most Geraldton gardeners know, or come to find out, this is the morbidly sensible habit of the bottlebrush. The oils in its flaming flowers and leaves leach toxins into the ground to kill off all new things that might compete with the old mother tree for scarce nutrients. She was a foot or two lower to the ground than she'd been accustomed to for the last few decades, and she felt the strange weight of a Star Wars school backpack dragging her further towards that ground. Down the road behind her, two younger sisters dawdled and squabbled over something that none of them would ultimately remember. Her younger brother lumbered like a bear at her side and had been complaining the whole walk home from school. Neither of them, once again, would remember the content of those complaints, but she had acutely recalled her annoyance at his whinging. For he was the golden boy, to whom all good things came, and he had no right to snivel and snipe and whinge. First the worst, second the best, rattled through her mind's ear and magnified her irritation. The golden boy was treated very well, in spite of lacking the sorts of responsibilities that she bore. Yet, as his carping wound down for a moment, his self-absorption gave way to some indication that perhaps he did have some burgeoning grasp of responsibility for those smaller lives that are dependent upon the consideration of older, more competent protectors. Hang on. Where's the dogs? I can't hear a sound out of them. Why aren't they barking? It was a good question, and oldest or otherwise, she had no answer. She saw the dry, red, stick-like bundles of hundreds of thousands of bottlebrush flowers beneath her feet, and she heard them crunch. And in the silence, between the words and the footfalls, she became uneasily aware that the front door was swinging ajar. Door's wide open. Maybe they got out. Mum wouldn't let that happen, though. Do you think she's all right? She was pretty funny yesterday. She was really quiet this morning. She's all right, though, isn't she? They'd walked up the driveway, and in spite of being 5 seconds or less from walking through that door, she felt two urges strike a panicked place deep within her brain. The first urge was that something was wrong, and it was taking too long to get to the door, and she should be running to check and see if Mum and the dogs were in fact all right. The second urge was that something was wrong, something that felt very, very wrong, and that she desperately and fearfully did not want to go into that silent house. She stood for half a second, and a tempered solution presented itself. Mum! Mum! Mum? She looked into her brother's scared, staring eyes, then turned to look at the two foolish sisters who were at the foot of the driveway, too far behind to have heard much of their conversation, but present enough to know that something was, indeed, quite badly wrong. You better come with me. You two, just wait here for a moment. No, actually, you go out and look down the street, see if you can find the dogs. They've gotten out and you two need to go and get them. She was the oldest, and she knew this duty more completely than any 11-year-old child should. Distract the young ones, assess the situation, and then get help from the relevant adults. Then, with a deep gulp of the hot, dry air, she marched up the steps, walked into the front door, and put this procedure into action. And in her dream, their mother would hear the tingling and jingling of keys, some time after she'd heard the distant wailing of living sounds. They might have been dogs barking or children shrieking. It didn't matter. Amidst the foggy dew, she still felt that she had to apologise, and she opened her eyes up as much as she was able to. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry about this. I'm sorry. Their mother saw grotesque faces that thronged around her and held her hands up to shield her eyes from these terrible clustering things with their fangs and their fingers and with their hideous fear. She saw the thick, oily blood all over her hands, and her vision went, as it did in these times, to black and white. Blood, after all, looks much less frightening in black and white. It could be the shiny waste from a spilt pen, or the skinny, interwoven shadows of tree branches, or the slick, fluid yolks of beaten eggs, or so many other things that a hurting mind could throw before it for protection. There was no such protection for the oldest. There seldom had been in the previous few years, and these days, in times like these, there was none at all. Shit! She's bleeding everywhere! Oh, shit, she's bleeding everywhere! Quick, grab the keys! We've got to get her to the hospital! Her brother stood far from the bed and blubbered in the doorway. His fat lip quivered idiotically at the blood and at the knife that lay upon her tattered stomach, and at the soft bleats his mother made in her twilight state of awareness. This fool was wasting precious time, and she repressed all reasonable urges to ball up her fists and belt him around his stupid, weeping face. Now! Get the keys! Right now! He complied. On the way, he stole a glance out of the yawning front door, and for a moment he thought he saw his younger sisters playing, chasing their 2 dogs, and dozens of other happy dogs and flocks of silly sheep that kicked up in the air among the cabbage moss in the long, tall lanes of wild oat grass, and they were all laughing and roaring like spitfires and tripping over each other in the beautiful, boundless sun among the jolly rows of the jacaranda and the ponciana and the paper daisies and the pig-faced flowers and the... Hurry up! We need to get her out of here! Come on, right now! Bring the keys, grab an arm each, drag her, step by bloody step, towards the front door. Mind the flight of descending wooden steps. Make sure the sisters are still distracted. We can tend to them later. Quick! Unlock the car. Then back here. Come on, help me. She's slipping. And he was shaking as he tried to unlock their car, and it made him slower in getting back to help his sister with their bleeding burden, and his mother's blood dripped and then pooled in the dry red bottlebrush flowers. He knew that he'd get into trouble for stopping to gawk like a half-wit. Something horribly magnetic in the sight before his helpless eyes threw his consideration out of all regard, though. And he stopped, and he beheld the new, wet, red blood, the old, red, dry, dead flowers, the halo of the flowers and the blood beneath the tree, and his sister despairing with such peculiar viciousness that such a slim woman could be so heavy, and the gentle babbling of his mother, I'm sorry, I am so sorry, and the way the blood and the flowers and the sand tangled around his blue Velcro shoes and clung to the ribbons of her red shirt and her red skin as his sister redoubled their efforts to raise their mother up. The ark of the ravens and the rit-tit-tit-tit-tit-tit of the starving honey-eaters that a few weeks ago had festooned the bottlebrush tree like limpets, but now were trying to rear chicks while keeping both the newfound lack of nourishment and the circling ravens at bay. What are you doing? Come on, come here and help me. Snapped from his senseless, mute witness back into the task of frog-marching his mother to the car, the boy couldn't have known that the sight of blood beneath the bottlebrush tree was one that he'd carry with him long, long into being a man. He couldn't know that in the happiest nights of his life, lying next to a woman he adored deeply and trusted completely, he'd wake gasping and wide-eyed with what she'd thought was comical abruptness until she'd see tears that he was trying to stifle and ask him what had happened, and hear him say that he'd been back somewhere that he didn't want to be in a time that he found difficult to talk about. And she would stroke his hair and tell him that he was safe, and tell him that she wouldn't let him go until she'd fall asleep in his arms. And he'd not sleep for the rest of the night, but would instead spend the hours until dawn sunshine in wondrous and devoted gratitude for her sweet, soft soul. And his mother had dreamed, as his sister drove the short, juddering way to the hospital, and his mother had dreamed the familiar winter's dream that his sister one day must inherit. And she dreamed of golden canola and Sunday drives with her own mother through the valley, in times when the sky was impossibly blue, before the bottlebrush had come to bloom.